friends, today we will talk about a very interesting phenomenon in psychology called as the Flynn effect. So what is the Flynn effect? The Flynn effect refers to the finding that the average human IQ has increased over time, which was first discovered by the researcher James Flynn in 1984. So the actual term Flynn effect was created by Bernstein and Murray in 1994 to refer to the James Flynn's findings of this increase in IQ over the time. In his groundbreaking paper, Flynn found evidence that representative samples of Americans did better and better on IQ tests over a period of 46 years, the total gain amounting to a rise in mean IQ of 13.8 points. With the assumption that IQ tests are an accurate representation of intelligence, this result indicates an increase in human intelligence over time. As Flynn discussed this, that human civilization has seen a big increase in IQ over time as every generation gets more and more questions right on the IQ tests. He explains that if you score the people a century ago against the modern humans, they would have an average IQ of 70. And if you score us against their norms, we would have an average IQ of 130. So there has been the biggest increase in IQ in specific areas of the test, like in the areas of classification and analogies, using logic on abstractions, etc. Flynn explains that this is likely representative of the change in thinking patterns of humans over time, especially when it comes to the hypothetical. This is a very interesting phenomenon. If you are asked how bright are your relatives, if there was a very good, accurate, fair intelligence test, okay, and it gives a score on the bell curve where 100 is average, we know that 66% of the people score between 85 and 115 and 97% between 70 and 130. So if you are 135, you are in top 1%. Okay, so research shows that people believe that every generation seems to gain about 4 to 6 IQ points. So your parents were brighter than your grandparents, and your children are going to be brighter than you. Every 10 to 15 years, we see a jump in national IQ. The discovery that may be what people believe, but is it true? It was American scientist James Flynn who gave this name to this effect. He noticed two things when he inspected famous and respected IQ test manuals. One was that every so often, the norms which describe typical scores for different age, sex, and race groups had to change. The other was that every few years, scores in the same age group were growing, so people were doing better over time. The tests seemed to be getting easier, or we were, as a species, as Homo sapiens, getting brighter, or both the things. This means that a good score in 1990 was a brilliant score in 1960, but it was a very average score in 2010. So the first thing was to check that this effect was true of many countries and many tests. Well over 20 countries' data have now been examined from America, Australia, Belgium, Britain, Brazil, etc. Okay, it was true over different types of tests: problem solving test, knowledge based test, vocabulary test, crystallized intelligence test, etc. One rich data source that was kept by the armies who measured the IQ of their soldiers to see whether they could become or should become pilots, marines, police, etc. The data show that the graph of average IQ of many thousands of young men in the same country appears to move steadily and remorselessly upward over time. There seemed to be impressive evidence of massive IQ gains, as he claimed. But the central question was why? Are we really becoming more intelligent? This, of course, led to the more fundamental question of whether these tests are really measuring intelligence or something else related to intelligence. This was a very interesting phenomenon. And there were two reasons why IQ scores were increasing, but actual IQ was not increasing. Maybe over time it was just cleverer people who were getting tested, or maybe people were just getting better at taking the tests because they were more used to test taking at school. This was evidence of a practical effect or practice effect. So Flynn gave the example of height. Just like average height has grown over generations, people their intelligence was also growing over generations. So we are getting taller. So why can't we get more intelligent, right? This is what the Flynn phenomenon is, and this Flynn effect still doesn't have a very satisfactory explanation. The research has certainly demonstrated that tests must regularly and routinely be re-standardized so that many misinterpretations can be prevented. So, Flynn effect also suggests environmental rather than genetic causes of change in intelligence. Brighter people seek out more stimulating environments for themselves and their children, which further increases their IQ. It raises the old arguments about nature and nurture. So for the flying effect to work, environmental effects can work both the ways. So a rich environment and a sustained effort can cause IQs to increase. Equally, with poor polluted environments and with people little interested in personal development, opposite effect occurs. Right? The effect is widely accepted as real and typically thought to be due to various societal improvements that enhance development of the brain and the nervous system like nutrition, healthcare and education. Let us see what are the exact causes of the flying effect. The first cause can be attributed to education. Every generation is spending more money on education and they are spending more time at school and with better facilities. Schooling has become compulsory, and society and people from all backgrounds have become used to learning. And as intelligence is related to learning, and because of better educational opportunities, maybe the IQ of people is rising. Another reason might be nutrition. People are better nourished, particularly in childhood, and that's the reason that they don't suffer from malnutrition. There are fewer people who have poor nutrition in youth, so the bottom end of distribution is removed, which means that the average score goes up. Also, social trends. We are much more used to time tests and performing against the clock, so we have become very familiar with tests. Apart from that, parental involvement. Parents provide a good environment and take great interest in the education of their children. And social environment. Our world is much more complex and much more stimulating than it was a century ago. Modernization and new technology mean that people have to manipulate abstract concepts more, and this is essentially what intelligence tests measure. But now, the flying effect is also being challenged. Questions have arisen about whether the flying effect has begun to taper off. That is, whether there is now a decline in the increase seen. This means that next generation will not score higher than this generation. There is a lot of growing skepticism as reports emerge from countries where IQ scores are on the decline, or from teachers who say that there is no evidence that children are getting brighter despite their improved exam results. Evidence now appears to be emerging that if indeed the flying effect was once really true, the rise has not only stopped but it has reversed. Some argue that there is now good reason to believe that overall there is a decline and not a rise in the general intelligence of the population. Certainly, debate about the flying effect or the line effect, which is effectively the opposite, has stimulated both popular and academic debate into the definition and measurement of intelligence, particularly in education but also in work settings. This was the flying effect. I'll be back with more interesting videos on psychology. Thank you for watching.